What up? What up in the building? What up in the building? We gonna run through this daily infomercial. Let me go ahead and put on some background music while we run through our infomercial.
In world news today, officials decree that rapper Brad Jordan, alias Scarface, must be stopped. After being monitored by Secret Service agents for 2 years, evidence leads tobacco and firearms officials to believe that his literally dope lyrics promote drug usage and distribution, degrade women, influence gambling, promote and teach violence, and more importantly, it's influencing our minors and destroying our community. Officials say he's a lord of underground rap, him and his music must be stopped.
We got this whole motherfucker on the mission. Now the whole entire world is started trying to come up with the quick decision. They claim we threats to society, and now they're calling on the government to try to make somebody quiet for the bullshit they done to me. Gangsta nips by sporting a Tupac never gave a gun to me, so gangsta rap ain't done shit for that. I've even seen white folks from River Oaks go get. So why you trying to kick some dust up? America's always been known for blaming us niggas while they fuck us, and we were always considered equal. Now they're trying to bust our only code of communicating with our people. Let's beat the game from a different angle. Matt Dillon pulled his pistol every time him when someone tangled. So why you criticize me for the shit that you see on your TV? The threats worse than PG. Just bring your ass to where they got me, so you can feel the hand of the dead body.
Nigga don't believe that song, that nigga's wrong. Gangsters don't live that long.
So now they trying separation and sending black folks in white coats to infiltrate our congregation, tapping into our conversation, saying the message that they get bring forth wrong premeditation. So David's got a silver man while listening to Brad. David gets pissed and killed his dad. David Duke's got a shotgun. So why you get upset? Cause I got one. A test kit, a task kit. A nigga got his ass kicked, shot in the face by a cop closed casket. An open and shut situation. Cop gets got, they wanna blame it on my occupation. If you don't dig me, then nigga you can sue me, cause the shit that I be saying ain't worse than a Western movie. Don't blame me, blame your man got it, so you can feel the hand of the dead body.
Nigga don't believe that song, that nigga's wrong. Gangsters don't live that long.
You best to free your mind before I bring my 9 in. Stop fucking with Detroit up hot or feel my hot rocks. Make bang, boom, big bean. I'm the black, white boys got a magazine that don't know how to act. I attack and make you vomit. Down with Khaled, Abdul Muhammad. Dewey got a brother, I'm Nick. I'm the illest. Wanna kill this house, nigga, John Cornelius. Can you feel this? You punk niggas make me sick. Sucking on the devil's dick, scared of revolution. Need to start pollution. Houston is the place. I caught a case. The motherfuckers tried to put a scar on my face, but I bust 2 times to the guts. Do the Reverend Calvin bust. Got a pair of nuts. I started this gangster shit in '86. Now you're dissing me for publicity. Isn't he a hoe to the 3rd degree? Who me? I'm a G that like to scrap a lot. Down with rap a lot, and I can't stop, won't stop. So fuck Bill and Hillary. Ice Cube, it ain't no killing me. Ice Cube, Scarface, dropping on these sellout ass niggas, doing it like
nigga don't believe that song, that nigga's wrong. Gangsters don't live that long. Nigga don't believe that song, that nigga's wrong. Gangsters don't live that long.
Definitely come over here, check out the Patreon. You know, check out the Patreon right here. You know, we got a bunch of stuff over here on our Patreon. Let's see here. So, what is going? Oh, damn! I forgot all about that. Shit. My bad. I had one more thing to promo, y'all. All right, now. Over here. the count is actually up to about 900 and something dollars. So, however, into this, before we get off into this, let's take a little step back. Let's look at where we were yesterday before we go ahead and bring ourselves on forward. 1 second. Let me see here. Let's go over here. Let's go and look at our history.
Thank you very much.
We definitely got to go back to where we was yesterday. Hold on.
Has it grown difficult for you to get around your home safely? National Seating and Mobility
of atonement. Now, atonement demands of us, to join the Christian faith. Listen to what he said. He said, quote, "In my bag, I have a foolproof method of controlling black slaves. I guarantee every one of you, if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and I make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes." I want you to listen. What are those three things? Fear, envy, distrust. For what purpose? Control. To control who? The slave. Who is the slave? Us. Listen. He said, "These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and they will work throughout the South." Now, take this simple little list and think about it. On the top of my list is age, but it's only there because it starts with an A, and the second is color or shade. There's intelligence, sex, size of plantation, status of plantation, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley or on a hill, north, east, south, or west, have fine hair or coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust, and envy is stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slave, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry it on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. Now, don't forget, you must pitch the old black male against the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the female against the male, and you must use the male against the female. You must use the dark-skinned slave against the light-skinned slave, and the light-skinned slave against the dark-skinned slave. You must also have your white servants and overseers distrust all blacks, but it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love.
One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right.
Love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, These keys are your keys to control. Use them. Never miss an opportunity. And if used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Thank you, gentlemen. End of quote. So spoke Willie Lynch 283 years ago. And so as a consequence, we as a people now have been fractured, divided, and destroyed, filled with fear, distrust, and envy. Therefore, because of fear, envy, and distrust of one another, many of us as leaders, teachers, educators, pastors, and persons are still under the control mechanism of our former slave masters and their children. And now, in spite of all that division, in spite of all that divisiveness, we responded to a call. And look at what is present here today. We have here those brothers with means and those who have no means, those who are light and those who are dark, those who are educated, those who are uneducated, those who are business people, those who don't know anything about business, those who are young, those who are old, those who are scientific, those who know nothing of science, those who are religious and those who are irreligious, those who are Christian, those who are Muslim, those who are Baptist, those who are Methodist, those who are Episcopalian, those of traditional African religion. We got them all here today.
Go ahead, brother.
And why did we come? We came because we want to move perfect union.
All right, y'all. Now, let me see 1 second right here so I can go in and start giving some people some wrenches. Got to go in and start giving some people some wrenches. In the meantime, while I'm getting this situated, let's go over what we talked about yesterday. Let me see here. Okay. Gotta give Wish the wrench. Okay. Demetria. We'll make Demetria a mod. I'm adding some mods on the screen. Definitely gotta make her a mod. All right, so now let me mute myself. So, what we explained yesterday in part 1 of the Willie Lynch is that since 1995, when Farrakhan basically talked about the Willie Lynch letter at the Million Man March, you know how I feel about these pastor type people, the Michael Eric Dysons, Martin Luther King, niggas, they put 50 adjectives on a sentence to explain their point. Be like, we were famished. We had a lack of bread. No Kool-Aid. We were unsatiated. Stomachs rumbling. We was hungry. Like, damn, nigga, you could just said that to begin with. But anyway, so there is a psychological condition called the Willie Lynch syndrome. The Willie Lynch syndrome is basically, it explains the disunity between Black people. This might be due to not detoxing properly from slavery. Okay, I gotta get to that later. this might be to not properly detoxing from slavery, right? However, these are conditions that come from not detoxing properly from slavery. Some people believe that this 300-year-old speech is the reason why come Black people have internal divisions. However, the famous Willie Lynch never existed. The only known Willie Lynch was born in 1742, 30 years after he was given the speech. The Willie Lynch speech was never mentioned during the 18th or the 19th century. No slave masters or anti-slavery activists ever mentioned it. No white abolitionists ever mentioned it. No slave master ever utilized his tactics. The Willie Lynch tactics on record specifically specifically to divide and conquer. The first mention of the speech came from UMSU in 1993. It was updated by Ann Taylor. In 1995, a history professor named Dr. William Pearson from Fisk inquired about this, and he asked, why was the derivative information all anonymous? And she said because she couldn't verify the authenticity. She also came in 1996 and said in the Black pages here in my beautiful St. Louis, Missouri, that she was tired of basically holding up the lie. Now, go on to my other seat. Who was Willie Lynch? The only known Willie Lynch lived from 1742 to 1820. He was from Pittsylvania, Virginia. And he never owned a plantation in the West Indies, nor did he own one in Virginia. The divide and conquer. The differences that Willie Lynch used were never concerns of slaveholders in the early 1700s. These are concerns of people in the 20th century, not of the 18th and 19th century. There were plenty of 20th century terms used in the Willie Lynch speech. As we heard Farrakhan say, he said, we will make the hate be refueling and self-regenerating. However, why in 1700 would you be refueling everything or anything when there were no automobiles? There were anchorisms in there, right? He said, in my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling slaves, for controlling Black slaves. Well, foolproof is a 20th century term, and Black is a term that was given in the 1960s. Remember, we were Blacks. I mean, we were colored people. Then we became Black. Then in 1988, Jesse Jackson called us African Americans. Here we are now as African Americans. All right. A historical argument to the Willie Lynch speech was that why did he come all the way from the West Indies to Virginia only to deliver an 8-paragraph speech? This 8-paragraph speech, that was not big enough. It was not grand enough, given the fact that you did not have airplanes at that time. Airplanes were still, commercial airplanes, by the way, were still 200 years from being invented. And you'll be on a boat for a long goddamn time to go from the West Indies to Virginia, only to basically read a 2-page letter and then go back home. when he rolled in his speech, he said, "We saw the hanging of a dead slave in a tree." Hanging did not start until the Reconstruction period in the late 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. That's when hanging and lynching niggas became a phenomenon. In his speech, when he opened, he never thanked the actual person that brought him to the event. He never thanked the person who actually said, "All right, Willie, I'm going to pay your way here." He only thanked the people who he was giving the speech to. Also, he never specified where specifically on the James River he was giving the speech. It just said on the James River. He never specified where he was from in the West Indies. There is no records of any William Lynch living in the West Indies ever. There are 5 tactics, basically, to controlling a slave, right? I'm going to explain this. This is tactic number 1, right? Tactic 1 is maintain strict discipline. Maintain strict discipline. That's one of the first that's one of the first tactics in controlling the slave. Tactic 2, instill belief of personal inferiority. Now, tactic number 3 is instill fear. Okay, this is tactic number 3, to instill fear. Tactic 4 is accept the master standards of good conduct. And last but not least, tactic number 5 is develop a habit I mean, now that I really read these, the same way you make a slave is the same way you make a hoe. Now that I'm actually sitting up and reading this is the same way that you basically make a hoe using these 5 rules. So if you read part 2 of the death of the Willie Lynch speech, can I get the letter I in the chat? If you don't want to write I, then write just put a hand up, right? If you read part 2 of the Willie Lynch speech or the death of the Willie Lynch speech, either write I in the chat or put a hand emoji up in the chat. Nobody read part 2 of Death of the Willie Lynch speech? Nobody read this? If nobody read it, right, I didn't read it. If you didn't read it, right, didn't read it. Okay, Wish read it. Okay, Jennifer read it. That's it. All right, we have no class participation. Okay. Wish. What did you get out of part 2 of Death of the Willie Lynch speech? My book will not be here till Saturday. Dimitri. What did y'all get out of part 2? I didn't read it. Okay. All right, listen. So before we go too far, right? Before we go too far, let me call Wish. I'm gonna call Wishbone. I'm gonna call Wish. Before we go too far,
Hello?
yeah, what's going on?
Hey.
So I need 2 favors.
Okay.
I need you to read the chat for me, and also, I need your opinion on part 2 of Death of the Willie Lynch speech. What did you get out of it?
Be honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got a bit confused because I was still stuck on trying to get past the first part.
Mm-hmm.
The inconsistencies of it all. So.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, I kind of got stuck right there. I didn't really take too much out of it because I knew I was going to go back and read it again.
Okay.
When you were just talking about the review for part 1, with all the different changes like the automobile, the terminology, and all those things,
mm-hmm.
we still don't have any solid facts of when it was actually written and all those things.
Well, it tells you in the book at the very end of the book when it was written and who wrote it. By the way, this would be the next book that we go ahead and we get into in our Black Studies. We could either go to this on a Black Studies or we could go back to Trust Me, I'm Lying. If y'all want to continue reading this, go ahead to read They Came Before Columbus and then hold back on Trust Me, I'm Lying. Then write Columbus in the chat. If y'all want to read Trust Me, I'm Lying next, then write Lying in the chat. What the fuck is that for? If y'all want to read They Came Before Columbus, again, write Columbus in the chat. If y'all want to read okay. All right, you back?
Hello?
Yeah, you back?
Yes.
All right, cool. We got you. Okay. All right. So they say Columbus. Okay. this is gonna be the next book that we read. I think we might have to kick this one off on like Sunday or something, because Saturday we are going to. Okay, everybody is saying Columbus. Okay, everybody wants to go to. They came before Columbus. Damn, just don't nobody want to read. Trust me, I'm lying. Okay, okay, Columbus. Okay, okay, cool. Well, we'll just put it like this. On Friday, if y'all want to do a complete review of all three parts, where we talk about what we have learned out of all three parts, then write Friday, all three parts of the Willie Lynch speech, and then write Friday in the chat. Drop the link in the chat, please. Yeah, today is Wednesday. Tomorrow we're gonna finish. Yeah, tomorrow we're gonna finish up this Willie Lynch book. Because for me, I don't, I'm reading the Kindle, so I don't know how long the book actually is.
Yeah, some people don't have the books yet, so.
Yeah. It's an easy read though for me. You know what I'm saying? It's an easy read. However, you said that you could not wrap your head around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't get past, you're reading it, but you're not really like absorbing anything because I'm still stuck on some of the other stuff, and I'm just like, So I said I was going to go back and read it again, but I thought once we met tonight that we was going to have a little bit more facts about, what the dates, the discrepancies of the dates, the terminology, when it was actually written, all those things.
So, I mean, well, we kind of talked about that last night. I know that we kind of got a bit off focus, but I mean, how do you feel? How do you feel? Or, what's your thoughts on those discrepancies, or what are the discrepancies? And let's talk about it.
I believe that it was modified over time with different things, like, the terminology that's used. It seemed like over time it just continued to change. So there had to be several different modifications that had to come into play. So that's just the way I look at it. Because like you said, some of the terminology wasn't even established until the 60s, 1960. So if the letter was written back in the 1700s, and then they changed terminology in the 1900s, and then they changed it again in the 60s, and then changed it again in the 90s,
Well, let me help you out. The letter is a fake letter. It's not real.
Okay.
At all. It's not a real letter. It was written by a college student, and it was written basically to trick people into believing it, but it's not a real thing. It's not a real thing.
So why would Louis Farrakhan recite the letter at the speech?
Well, I mean, in your lifetime, how many different Louis Farrakhan's have you seen?
You have only seen one Louis Farrakhan.
I'll say that we have seen about 3 or 4 different Louis Farrakhan's.
And who would that be?
Well, when you first had Louis Farrakhan come out, you had Louis Farrakhan doing things like he was very, swaggerocious. He would say, "Oh, the goddamn blonde-haired, blue-eyed devil." You know what I'm saying? You had that Louis Farrakhan. And then you had Louis Farrakhan, who was basically, because he was just basically a Baptist preacher that, he put a lot of that pizzazz on her.
Right.
Then you had him kind of moving. He started getting hit by the FBI because the Nation of Islam it is a considered to be a FBI hate group for real. So you had him going through that, and then they were saying he was anti-Semitic. Then right here around the time Million Man March, that's 95. Then he starts moving into this where, it's like, okay, well, you have, he called a million man from all around the country to come and atone. What were you atoning for? Existing? Living? What were you atoning for, right? So he called all of these men there, right? And essentially, we had a bunch of men who were, to atone means to make amends or reparation. This nation has capitalized on black men. They have capitalized on the black struggle. They have capitalized off of black people. Slavery is the most profitable business that ever existed. It's no business that has been more profitable. Even Apple stock is not, it's not better than slavery, because we know basically Wall Street was the first stock in this nation. That's where they sold the slaves, on Wall Street.
Right.
However, you had Farrakhan go to the nation's capital to do a bunch of grandstanding. He called a million men there. Black people don't own no gas stations, no airlines, no hotels, pretty much no hotels. So when you had no rental car companies for the most part, so you were renting white people cars, buying white people gas, flying in white people planes, saying white people hotels to prove your point. And then you were there to atone. What were you atoning for? The nation owes a debt to black people that they have never paid. So you have Farrakhan go through all of that, and they was getting hit up. They in the late 80s through the 90s, they was getting hit the fuck up. Then now, fast forward towards today, or the most modern years, you have Farrakhan talking like this. Greetings to Allah, the merciful, the benevolent, and then he said they murdered. Like if you listen to Farrakhan now, it ain't that same fire. It ain't that same heat that he initially drew everybody in on. You don't
think age took a toll on that?
But that's my point. Young men are for war, older men are for counsel. You know what I'm saying? I'm 30. I'm still fiery. I don't give a fuck. So I can lead something because I still got a fire burning there. When you get older, you get softer. That's just with age.
Right.
Because you got shit to consider, like, oh, I got children and grandchildren. If I get out there, I got gout in my knee. I got this, I got that. You got all of these limitations in your mind when you get old. When you get young, you be like, man, fuck that. You ain't thinking about that type of stuff. So the fact that he never assigned anybody else to come and take over the leadership seat in the Nation of Islam, I mean, that kind of tell you who he is as a leader, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah. It tells you exactly who he is.
Right. Well, with that being said, how do you think that, although you're saying the Willie Lynch letter is fake, what's going on in the world today? How do you think that affects what we see, what's going on now?
I don't think it affects anything in the current world. And that was actually the topic for today's show. This is why it was part 2, because we were supposed to read through part 2 of the Willie Lynch letter. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is the Black agenda? And this is something that you and I were speaking about last night. Let me ask you this. Why is history so important?
Well, history repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mainly why it's so important.
Okay, now ask the question back to me.
Why do you think history is so important?
Because if we don't know the origins of our problem, how can we find our solution? Realistically, if we don't know the origins of our problems, how can we find our solutions?
Right.
We have to be able to find our solutions.
So with that being said, do you think that there's any solutions to what we've experienced in history? Because, I mean, if you're looking at today, and let's go back 20 years, 30 years ago, I don't think we've got a solution to half the problems that we've carried over for many years.
Okay, such as what?
I guess the biggest one would be racism.
We do got a solution to racism. I mean, it's the same thing like with R. Kelly stuff. It's not hard. I mean, it's not a complex problem. It's a simple problem. Nobody wants to do the work. First, America has to acknowledge that they have a problem. Once you acknowledge that you have a problem, then you can go and fix it. But America still says racism don't exist. We had a Black president. Hey, Black people shouldn't get reparations. Well, I feel like we need some tangibles. We need tangibles because every other group that was majorly harmed by the United States government and its actors and sub-actors, they have received reparations. The Indians, they got reservoirs. You know what I'm saying? They got reservations. I'm sorry, I said reservoirs. The Indians have reservations, right?
Right.
Now, as you always get on me about, I'm about to give a long-winded answer. Just bear with me, because I'm definitely gonna make it worth everybody's time. Definitely gonna make it worth everybody's time. Now, Indians have they basically have reservations. They have acknowledged that they have done wrong to the Indians, right?
Right.
So they have put precautionary measures in place to basically go in and start fixing these things.
Right.
They have put those things in place. They have they acknowledge that they did wrong. I mean, Manhattan is an Indian word for land of many hills. That's what it stands for. So you have them acknowledging this. They don't pay any taxes on those reservations. I don't think that any Black person should reasonably have to pay taxes. Let's start with that. Let's start with that. No Black person should have to pay taxes. Right now.
When you say Black person, though, it has to be based. Is it going to be based off just because of the way you look, or is it going to be based off of your actual DNA? Because you have a lot of people that may look, have a certain tone to them, and you would assume that they're Black, as American Black. But when you pull the DNA, and you do a what you call it? What kind of test is it called? I can't think of the medical terminology for the test, but then you find that they have different, they're not just black. They are, they have Caucasian, Chinese, all kinds of stuff. So when you say black shouldn't pay taxes, what percentage of?
Well, first we gotta cut this shit and stop playing games. They know who black people are. White folks know exactly who the hell black folks are. All of this one drop, this 3/5 rules, all of that. They know who the black people are because you have simple things like interstates. The American interstate system was put in the ghettos, put in the hoods, in order to break up and split up black neighborhoods. And they were put there scientifically and militarily so that if a war broke out, or you had to enforce martial law, black people would not be able to invade. And you can have the military come in and basically strap the whole hood down off of by use of the interstate. That's just something deep. The lanes on the highway got to be deep enough that you can roll a tank, and they got to be wide enough you can roll a tank down them. It's just simple stuff. Simple. These are simple things. Are you looking at the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what this is? And I think I have made it as big as I can. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger.
Is this the picture that I'm looking at? I see some people sitting down and some standing up. That's the picture?
Yeah.
Look like Indians. Some sort of looks like Indians.
You know what tribe?
Not Cherokee, right?
No, this is the last tribe of known Indians that are basically kind of like still in existence.
Isn't that out of Louisiana?
No, it's out of New York.
New York? Oh. What's the name of the tribe?
I'm gonna write it in the chat so I can get it, because people are going to want to Google this. These are the Algonquin Indians. This is the last known Indian tribe still in existence to this day. They are in New York. These are the Algonquin.
And how do you pronounce that? Algonquin?
Algonquin.
Algonquin, okay.
Yeah. Algonquin. Let me research what the hell that actually means. Let's see here. Let's see. They say Algonquin tribe. So, okay, they got a whole Wikipedia thing. So these are basically a geographic Indian group that is kind of throughout the northern United States and Canada. Let me see here. Let me see.
Do they own any property or anything in New York?
Yeah, they do. Right here, but these are actually black people, by the way. Yeah, so this is shit. You see it right here?
I remember reading an article about Black Indians, and they were saying that there are still some Black Indians in existence. They are based out of Louisiana.
Here we go, right here. The Indian reservation. These 4 1/2 acres have never belonged to the white man, having been set aside in 1728 as an Indian reservation by the 40 proprietors who purchased the praying Indian town of Hananessamink. Shit, I can't say that.
Wow.
Now this is a deep book, right? So you know we're gonna go to they came before Columbus, but this is actually the newer iteration of they came before Columbus. This is called the first Americans were Africans, documented evidence, natural, by David M. Hotel. That's some very deep book right there. This is a very deep book, but yeah, this is the first Americans were Africans, so, but when we go over here and we look at, basically they came before Columbus. Basically what David M. Hotep did was he took this guy's work and he basically updated this. He updated a lot of Ivan Van Sertima's work. Do you know do you know how they discovered that Black people were the first ones to give birth to civilization?
No.
Okay. So Ivan Van Sertima actually talked about this when he was alive. He's since passed away. But he talked about it being basically 6 different skull types and 6 different skull phenotypes. And when you go and look at the skeleton of somebody, you can tell a person that was Black or African because you have a specific bone structure that is definitive within these different groups of the Negro phenotype, So Ivan Van Sertima was the first person to really go in and break that down. So this is definitely right here, but this is gonna be many parts. Like this Willie Lynch thing, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is the 3 parts. This is nothing. It's gonna be so many things we're gonna have to explore with this. They came before Columbus. That is going to be deep. Like this is it.
Wow.
Yeah, they were in upstate New York, Sunflower Power. But but just going into the Indians to basically get back to what we were talking about, which was the history, the solutions, how we find the solutions. I was saying that Black people, we have a very unique circumstance because we were the only group of people that are here that did not migrate here, And so Eddie Griffin, the comedian, once said this. He said that nigga is a euphemism or acronym to explain this: a non-immigrant growing, gaining, and achieving. Nigga means non-immigrant growing, gaining, and achieving. Can I get some niggas in the chat?
You sure about that?
You
sure about that?
Yeah.
I mean, you sure you want them to write that in the chat?
It's all Black people in here. But anyway, moving right along. we have a unique circumstance. So, due to the fact that we got a unique circumstance, it's going to take a unique fix to basically remediate our problems. So, we
Yeah.
need our own banking system. We need our own waterways, our own water system. You know, we need our own. We need to set aside specific land so that we can grow our own food. We need um, we need a specific set aside for the next
Uh-huh.
50 to 100 years, where black kids can go to college or go to technical school to learn horticulture and agriculture, so that they can learn how to farm and how to irrigate, how to do these different things.
Right.
We need also for the next 100 years, we need for black people to be able to go to medical school for free to learn how to be doctors. But we also need them to uh, be able to meet and congregate with African doctors, because the whole medical system, when you take a Hippocratic oath, the bill of health is all measured by white men who are at war. That is why come you see so many people dying of disease every day, because the medical standards of good health is not really that of good health, but it
Uh-huh.
is that it is saying that you are no longer a detriment to yourself to get back out there on the battlefield and go and fight a war. That is where, so basically, our medical standards today were built off of white men in World War I who needed to get back onto the battlefield. And then they said, well, this is the standard of good health. So, did you know that?
Kinda. I was gonna ask you,
Mm-hmm.
were you aware of a gentleman that actually has? He does have a YouTube page. I'm not gonna say his name on here because I don't want to give anybody no platform or no clout or nothing like that. But all the things that you just said, he is trying to be the spearhead of that,
Mm-hmm.
and he's actually promoting himself to run for president. Um, I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
I don't know who you're talking about at all, so I am not aware. Yeah, I
I
am.
will send it. I'm gonna text it to you, and then you can look at it in your spare time.
Mm-hmm.
But so there are people out here that are the same thing that you just said. I mean, they pretty much have like
Is this person a doctor?
Yep.
Is they related to Frederick Douglass or claims to be?
I don't think so.
Okay. Do the first name start with a U?
No.
Okay. All right. Cool. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I'll send it to you.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, like I was saying, there are some people that are exploring the solutions, and they are trying to put things in place, but they don't have enough support from the community to push.
Okay. So let me ask you this. You are married. Do you think that marriage is up or down in the black community? More now? Would you say that it's up more now than in the 1950s and 60s, or is it down more now than in the 1950s and 60s?
It's probably down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say that it is definitely down. There are less people getting married and all of that, Let's see here.
Yeah, you got a lot of, single parent homes. You don't have families that stick together. You don't have families that support each other. I mean, it's sad to see where we are now in this day and age, but like you said, it stems from all those things that's happened historically that led up to today. And it's just pretty much a product of that.
Okay, so are you familiar with the Moynihan report?
No.
That's definitely something we got to put on the book club reading list. There was a report that came out in 1965 from a Patrick Daniel Moynihan. And pretty much what he talked about was how if the Black community stayed in this current state, how you will start having these problems, the imprisonment, all of that, that we see going on today. You would see that he forecasted this in 1965. He did this. He was a sociologist, and so he basically did this report. It was called "The Negro Family: A Case for National Action." And he talked about, fatherlessness in Black households and all of that, right? And so, if you want to kind of get off into that, we can, let's see here, you can Wikipedia this. I don't recommend going to Wikipedia for a lot of things, but, definitely we're going to have to do a case study. We go in one day and we start breaking down this report. So, it talks about several different things, the deep roots of poverty in our community. Let me ask you, where do you think that the Black community really started to fall off? Because we were once a progressive people, but then there were a set of events that kind of happened.
Probably in the early 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Why would you say that?
Well, there was a lot of government experiences that were going on. One major one was the drugs that was brought into the lower income areas. And it just kind of went from there. So like the projects and the different things of that nature. That's where I believe it started to fall off, because like you said, it was an era where people was coming together, people was standing up, people was, trying to fight against the system, and then it just went all downhill.
So how does the Willie Lynch letter tie into all of that?
Because it's pretty much exactly what it says, how they pin people against each other. They put people, it's like the projects, they put people in an area and then they pin them against each other based off of, income, male versus female, and all those things that they list in the letters. I mean, that's pretty much what they did.
Okay. So,
in my opinion.
Okay, so what was the Black divide? Like, when did we start seeing division? Because I would say that Black people were once a people that was very together. It was more collective. I remember being a younger man, Christmas used to mean something, and it wasn't just because I was a kid, but Christmas used to mean something. Now Christmas is just, when we have a party and shit, I get, fucked up, drunk as hell. But, it's not, it don't feel real familiar. It don't be like, oh shit, I'm going to see my family. It'd be like, I gotta be around these niggas. I can't fucking stand these niggas. Some other people. So I'm just keeping it real. Shit, I'm telling you the truth. Shit. Shame to death.
Yeah. I mean, to like point out one particular area where it started to fall apart. I mean, I think it's just too many different sequences of time where things just change. But if you go back to whenever there was a lot of, like the Black Panthers and, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and that era of time is when people really was trying to come together and make change. And it seemed like as time went on, it just started dwindling out of control. They killed off all the good leaders. They started these little projects. The government had their own agenda, and and the product of what you see today is what happened from there. A lot of these things happen over time. It's not nothing that just happens, in 1 year and 1 month. It's something that happens over time. So what we're living in now is actually a product of something that they started 20, 30 years ago.
I would say that it started 110 years ago.
Well, yeah, that's it.
Based on Willie Lynch now.
Well, yeah. But like you said, it wasn't really introduced to that level until the 90s, right?
No, it started. What are we talking about specifically when you say it wasn't introduced? What are we talking about specifically? Because we creating this discussion, but I'm gonna have to leave Earth in a minute. So yeah. Yeah. So which question are you asking me specifically?
Well, I was pretty much piggybacking what you said about the question you asked me about the different eras and when things started to change.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said I believe the change started 30 years ago, and then you said it started 100 years ago.
Okay.
But based off of the resources that we found about the Willie Lynch letter, you saying it wasn't really introduced on a larger platform until the 90s.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say that I'm going to say that Willie Lynch has handicapped the Black community for the last 25 years because it has left us devoid and defunct of finding the real reason or the true reasoning for the Black divide.
Uh-huh.
And that is what we are here for today. So find out what is the true reasoning for the Black divide.
I'm just looking in the chat, and some Dorothy had mentioned in the 70s, the crack era.
The crack era was in the 80s. Crack didn't really come out until like 84.
And then the welfare that came into place. That pretty much removed. They tried to remove fathers from homes. So then you had the.
This is the book club though for a reason.
Yeah, I'm just looking at. I'm just
Okay.
reading.
Well, why don't you ask me what is the true reasoning for the Black divide?
So, Mr. Trent, what do you think the true reason for the Black divide, and when did it start?
All right, cool. Thank you for asking me. Let me see. Now, during the early 20th century, there was a fundamental shift, right?
Right.
Now, this fundamental shift was that prior to World War I and just before World War I, that was 1914 through 1918, you had one major thing happen.
Uh-huh.
You had a majority of Blacks that was, let's just say, between 1910 and 1920. Blacks were mostly isolated. 90% of the Black people in America was all from the South, right? 90% of all Black people in America all come from the South. Well, right around the time before World War One. Remember, slavery was just over because the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1865, but that didn't actually happen until really about 1884. So this is maybe 25 some years after slavery is actually ending, truly ending. But then remember, you had sharecroppers, you had indentured servitude, and then you had the Reconstruction era. So basically, the Reconstruction era was basically dying. Their sharecropping shit was dead. Niggas was like, "Man, I'm tired of being slaves." So you had all these blacks migrating up from the South. So they went up, they migrated up northward, right? They started going to cities like New York, to Chicago, to Philly, to Detroit, to St. Louis, to Cleveland, Gary, Indiana, Columbus, Ohio, and Akron, Ohio. These cities started to become ghettos. They became ghettos because you had a new labor class or a new resident class basically move in from the South. These people only had the little scraps they was left over with after slavery and sharecropping and cotton picking and all that shit. This is all that they had. With these basically rural black people that were living real rural, living in places like Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Willahoochee, Georgia. These like little country folks. This is the first time during the 1910s, 1920s that you get black people moving into major cities. And, in history, they call that the Roaring 20s. White women was falling in love with what we like to call nigger dick. So you had all of this stuff going on. These black folks was moving into the inner cities. So now, this created a problem. Do you know the problem it created?
Competition.
Bingo. You had these new black people popping up, and this is where you got a new labor class, right? So who is more motivated to do a job than somebody who is just working for free? You working for a place to like lay your head. I mean, it's just like, nobody's more motivated than somebody who ain't got shit at all. So that being said, you start to see the formations of labor unions, right? This is like when white folks start deciding they got to protect their jobs. This is where you get the Jimmy Hoffas. He came up. He became more relevant or prevalent during this time, right? Because they make him seem like he was just this great patron dude, right? Really, shit, he's fighting fucking racist. I mean, he wasn't fighting for niggas' jobs. He was fighting so white men could keep their jobs. So with this new labor class, we started to see major things happening, right? Do you know what happened because of this new labor class beyond just the creation of the labor unions? Do you know what we saw because of that?
No. What did they say?
So we saw basic race wars. Race wars were started. You had the race war in East St. Louis in 1917. We had the race war in Houston in 1917 as well. I'm sorry, in 1919. Chicago had a race war in 1919. Elena, Arkansas had a race war in 1919. Tulsa,
Uh-huh.
Oklahoma had a race war in 1921. And then Rosewood, the movie where Ving Rhames is in, had a race war in 1923 because of this.
Okay.
That all happened during the first migration of Black people up from the South, right? Black people coming up from the South, that is what caused these things to pop off, that right there, it was that migration, So,
Right.
What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, that makes sense. What you're saying, I mean, when you think about it. So technically, my thoughts are, that was the beginning of what we're initially talking about. It's how things started to get to where they are today. That was kind of like the start of it all.
Yeah, that was the start, right? And people, if y'all ever want to stop like watching bullshit programming and the gossip on YouTube, then go and rent you or go and buy or Fire Stick or whatever your means is. Watch this movie Rosewood. Just to tell you about when Black people started migrating up from the South. Some of the stuff they was going through, some of these race wars that was going on with Black folks. I
have a question for you.
Yeah.
When you're talking about these race wars, when did the Klan come in and start their groups and the things that they were doing in the midst of all of this? Because I think that's one.
The Ku Klux Klan was way after. The Ku Klux
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's this one part of the whole conversation that we really haven't spoke about, but I know that it plays a very important part because of the fact that they did come in and it shifted a lot that was going on in the families as well. Well,
you had 3 different iterations pretty much of the Ku Klux Klan. And we would have to basically do a whole show on that. But I mean, you had the Ku Klux Klan taking place between 1865 and 71. You had the Klan, you had the basic rebirth of the Klan between 1915 and 1944. So this is, remember, World War I started in 1914. And then 1944, you know why that year is important?
1944. No, I don't.
And that's when World War II basically ended. And then you got the third Ku Klux Klan that was basically formed in 1946, and it's still relevant to this day. So yeah. But
no, I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, the Klan plays a very big part in this whole conversation.
Yeah, what way?
I mean, there's a lot of different ways. I don't really want to get into it too much, because like you said, that's a whole separate topic in itself. But just based off of what we initially started with the Willie Lynch letter, and then talking about where we are today, and then how did it get started, and all these things, I think the Klan fits somewhere in that scenario of all the different changes. But, like I said, that's a different topic for a different day.
Definitely. Well, let me ask you this. We're talking about migration, right? Talking about the first migration, my bad. First. Talking about the first migration. Do you know why that's important?
No.
Want to take a stab at it?
If I had to take a stab at it, I would say it's probably important because that's when the war ended, and that's whenever the blacks from the South were able to get their first shot at having established some type of livelihood for themselves. But I could be wrong.
I'm gonna help you out a little bit. The reason why that's important is because that is the actual first reason for some of the issues that are listed in the Willie Lynch letter, right? That is the beginning of a lot of the issues that were in the Willie Lynch letter. Was this first migration. So you had black folks that were coming up from the South. And yeah, when you had these black folks that were coming up from the South, you had this new labor class. Then, okay, a lot of black folks were funneled in together. Who would be able, during slavery, we had a lot of raping and shit like that going on. So then we have basically the birth of a lot of terms like fur skin. Have you ever heard of that?
I have heard of the term.
What the fuck is fur skin? It just means that you are closer to white. You could probably pass for white. So of course, if you have a competing labor class and you're trying to hire folks for a job, who would be more apt or more prone to get a job?
The fair-skinned.
Yeah, the fair-skinned person. You know, because they pass for white. I'm hiring one of my own. Right? And so if I got a job and you don't have a job, you know, then we are breeding contempt. Right?
Right.
Now, have you ever heard of Iceberg Slim?
Iceberg Slim?
Slim.
No.
Okay. Iceberg Slim was a pimp that wrote books.
That's probably why I didn't heard of it.
I mean, Iceberg Slim was a pimp that wrote books.
Okay.
And when he wrote it, he basically wrote a book that was called Trick Baby.
Okay.
Trick Baby was about a real light-skinned, some would call fair-skinned black man. And with this fair-skinned black guy, or I say fair-skinned, but with this light-skinned black guy, then he would essentially pass for white. When this guy passed for white, then he was able to go in and they were able to run a lot of cons on people because people thought that he was white. Right? And they used to call him Trick Baby because of that. Because, you know, he was basically a trick baby, you know, like you know, that's the trick that he pulled. So this right here is a scene from the movie Iceberg Slim's movie Trick Baby. You know, but this is about one of those kind of fair skin or lighter complected black guys that could pass for white. You know, so
which one is he?
The one in the pinstripe suit. That's
Wow.
Trick Baby.
And he was black?
Yeah, he's black. I mean, of course, this is an actor. You know, this is not
Oh,
who the actual pimp Trick Baby, because it's a
I'm about to
movie.
say.
It was kind of during that blaxploitation era
Uh-huh.
that you begin getting Trick Baby, or they call them white folks. I mean, it's a current pimp who's still in the game right now, who's called white folks, but he just a white boy, to do some pimping and shit. So yeah,
Yeah, I have to check that out.
yeah.
But question for you: you had mentioned fair skin, and
Mhm.
I couldn't help but think about you had showed us a picture of the Indian earlier. The
Mhm.
terminology redskin was a racist term that was going towards the Indians.
Mhm.
I don't know exactly what time frame or anything like that, but when you said that, it made me think about the terminology redskin and how the Indians were pretty much, you know, in that category.
Well, do you know how to? Do you know how to? What's the question I want to ask? Do you know why they called the Indians Redskins?
Uh, I do, but I wouldn't be able to recite it at this moment because I actually took a class on that, and I wrote a long paper about it.
Do you want me to help you out?
So long ago. Say again.
Do you want me to help you out?
Sure.
From my research, again, opinionated news, we bring research. All right, shameless plug. All right, so from my research, when they would kill Indians, they had an Indian problem when they first got to America, so they gave them the smallpox. Christopher Columbus, of which we is the namesake for Columbus Day. Now I ain't going to work on no holiday. Fuck that shit. But Christopher Columbus, who was the namesake of Columbus Day, they bought smallpox. They bought all these different diseases out of Europe. Remember Europe didn't have hand soap. They didn't even have a sewage system. They learned that from Africans. But they bought all of these diseases, and they were starting to kill the Indians off with their smallpox, these different diseases that they brought over. When they basically got this guy. His name was Buffalo Bill. And when we're going to look at historic pictures of people like Buffalo Bill would go around and he would kill all of the buffaloes. So when he would kill off a lot of the Indians' food sources, so they could not eat. And that's just what he would do. And he would, and they just had stacks of they had stacks of buffaloes that basically, they tried to starve the Indians out. And the Indians they couldn't starve off, the ones they couldn't get with disease, they just flat out killed them. When they killed them, they would cut their heads from the scalp and let their bloods pour all over their skins, and then they called them redskins. Have you ever heard of that? Did that sound familiar?
It sounds familiar. And also read when I was doing the research for the paper that I did that the Indians that were affected in that tribe back then are still trying to get the NFL to remove that name from the football team. The Redskins football team. So it's just a little bit information about that. They're literally still using that name today.
So let's see right here. I'm gonna divert y'all attention, if y'all allow me to. If you look right here, Basically, what you see is where they have killed all of these buffaloes, have skinned them alive, and these are the skulls of the buffaloes. Oh, damn. Shit, let me click off of that screen. Let me take y'all to the actual picture that I'm seeing right here. These are all of the buffaloes that they killed. That's how bad they wanted the Indians gone.
What is that?
That is a mountain of dead buffalo skulls that they have created. Those are all the buffaloes that they killed because they were the Indians' food source. Yeah. Yeah. So this is kind of what went on during that time. I don't forgot why we got here, but moving right along. Do you know when the second migration happened?
In the 50s?
No.
When did the second migration happen?
Well, let me ask you a better question. What two main factors, two historical what were two historical things that basically happened between the years of 1925 and 1945?
Two historical things that happened between 1925 and 1945. Oh God, there's so many.
I mean, if you just pick the two glaring ones.
I want to say the wrong one.
Let me help you out. I'm gonna give you one. The Great Depression. Yep, there you go. The Great Depression.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that had anything to do with the fact that with the Willie Lynch letter?
To some degree, yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, before we get into that, let's talk about this. Now, if me and you got the same enemy, but we dislike each other, are we going to fight each other first, or are we going to join forces and attack the enemy?
Join forces to attack the enemy. And then after you defeat the enemy, then you fight each other.
Okay. Now, do you think that countries come from a European mind state, or do they come from an African mind state?
European mind state.
Definitely European. Why you say that?
To colonize.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what about from a Black people's or African standpoint?
From an African standpoint, to be honest with you, they didn't really have a choice.
Okay. All right.
They didn't have a standpoint. They didn't have a choice.
Okay. Did you look at the thumbnail for the show today?
The thumbnail for the show tonight. I didn't receive anything.
It's a thumbnail that was posted on the show.
Oh, was? Where is it at?
When you clicked on this video link, it was a thumbnail that was on the video. Well, let me help you out. You are familiar, with George Clinton in the Parliament of Funk, right?
Yes.
Okay. Who were they imitating?
Indians.
Who?
Indians.
Were they weren't imitating these people who you see on the screen right now?
I don't see anything. I don't see anything.
You don't have your other phone. Okay.
I mean, I see you, but I don't see nothing else. Oh, okay, now I see something. What is this?
You don't know what this is?
No.
This is the
Wait a minute. This is an African tribe?
Yeah.
Okay.
These are the Dogon people. This is who, when George Clinton said the mothership connection, this is what they were talking about. These people, they were in tune with the Sirius B star. These people knew perfect astronomy. But without no modern tools, these people knew perfect astronomy.
Okay.
Because it was passed down during the oral tradition. The reason why I bring this up is because African people are tribal people. Africa was never ever connected as one great big continent. We just say, well, listen, from this mountain range to this river, this is our tribe. Okay, we're gonna call this tribe Somali. From that river to this grassland, this is our tribe. We're gonna call ourselves the Congo people or the Congolese. So on for Nubia, what's Ethiopia, Songhai, wherever you want to go. We were a tribal people. Now, slavery is a hell of motivation for people to get on the same goddamn page. Period. But when we all have a collective person that is oppressing us, we're going to join forces with the oppressor. That is a fact that we can't get around. We are going to join forces against the against the oppressor. So when we join our forces against the oppressor, we are collective. So Black people during slavery times were collected. Black people, after slavery, they were still collected. They were a collective. Black people during the first migration that we talked about, they were still a collective. You still had unity. You still had Garveyism, where Marcus Garvey came over to America. Now, these black people were still one great big collective. Because again, we all have a common goal. We got light-skinned folks who are getting all of it. They started getting little set-asides, and the rest of the niggas, they start looking crazy. However, with them, basically getting these set-asides and these things like that, but you still had the Black body that was together as a whole. To this day, Black people got niggas that's their cousins. They ain't hardly blood related, but that tells you of how much togetherness the Black community has. Because Black people go and pick up cousins. Nigga, that's my cousin. That's my brother. Look at R. Kelly. This nigga got like 76 sisters. You feel me? So, you get all of this picking up a family because, again, Black folks is connected. We all belong to the same tribe of niggerdom. Now, we move this to the second migration. Second migration for Black people happened between the years of 1939, 1945. This is where the second massive wave of Black people, they got up out the South and they went to the West Coast.
Okay.
Now, when these folks going to the West Coast, remember there was a gold rush going on. Hence the name, the name of the football team, the San Francisco 49ers. In 1949-ish, they were going over there. They were mining for gold. They were looking for gold, all of that. Now, in 1910, African Americans, they were predominantly rural people in the South. Approximately 75% lived in rural areas, and they were 90% in the South. 50 years later, 75% lived in major cities, right? Okay. So at this time, we also, now this is beyond the scope of this. I'm going into one of my other books, but I got to bring it together to make it make sense.
Okay.
Now, you are military affiliated, right? I don't know if you serve, but I know that you have some military affiliations.
Right.
All right. So what was something major that came out of World War II?
Something major that came out of World War II?
Many military people used this to go to school. Starts with a G, ends with an L.
You got me on that one.
The GI Bill.
Okay.
That comes out of World War II. Because, again, you had all these different things taking place. Well, during World War II, you also got several different social aid programs because you had soldiers returning home from war. They, basically got their arms and shit blown off. They got fucked up in this war. All of this. Invention of the GI Bill. Well, when they went to war, then you also had their wives that were at home. They had to do something. Outrolls Section 8, outrolls welfare, outrolls public aid. This stuff was meant for white women. This shit wasn't meant for black women because black women were housemaids and all of this stuff. They were basically scrubbing floors for rich white folks. They were doing grunt work, but black women had jobs. So incomes, this Me Too shit, this is the creation of this Me Too thing, the woman suffrage thing. And I know some of y'all like, nigga, when the podcast coming, get to y'all on that. But from that, you get the invention of all these public things for the soldier's wife. You start getting all these public aid programs, the things that they put the negative stigmas on black women for were actually invented or mostly used by white people. They most beneficial to white women, specifically white wives of military people. They used it the most. Now, that being said, you had black folks that were moving out to the West Coast. They were mining for gold, but then this is when you start seeing black folks start going to your Seattle, your LA, San Diego's, Vegas, whatever. Vegas wasn't really there like that. Vegas is a mostly modern type of thing that you start seeing black folks in Portland. So you start seeing this influx of black folks all up into the West Coast or whatever. They was all out in the Bay Area, or as some of the people call it, the Yay area. They were all, you had them all over there. So with that being said, though, we basically started going into these major cities. Now with us going into these major cities, we are up out of we up out the South altogether. We have basically separated ourselves from what was keeping us connected. You know, we us being
Right.
here, us being here, being together, we have separated ourselves. Now, when we moved in the hood through migrations, one wave of migration, and then we had a second wave of migrations. Then now we in the inner city, which we run into what problems in the inner city. We run into something called urbanization. And this is where you get your St. Louis's, your Detroits, Cleveland, Ohio, your Akron, your LA, Columbus, you name it, Philly, New York, Chicago. All of these places are filled up with niggas. All of them are filled up with niggas. So now that we got all these cities filled up with niggas, now we got urbanization, right? So for urbanization, we get reverse gentrifications because Black folks was once a rural people, but now they have moved into the inner cities. The GI Bill, not only did it give way for public aid, but this might be mind-blowing to you. You know what else was created with that package after World War II, Wish?
What's that?
The FHA.
Okay.
So now you got but beyond that, you got the VA that was also came out of World War II. Now again, y'all, apologize because I'm going beyond the scope of this book to pull all of this shit together. But you got the VA, you got the FHA that will basically issue loans. These people are returning back from folks are returning back from war. When these folks return back from war, now the government is giving people specific set-asides in order to move out, in order to move out of the hood. So I'm sorry, to move out of the inner cities. So white folks are getting white folks are basically creating the suburbs.
Okay.
And this is where you start getting basically the suburbs. Now, do you know how Donald Trump basically got rich?
There's many stories out there, but no, I don't really know one way or another. There's some stories out there that said that he had generational wealth that was passed on from his father.
Yeah. Do you know where his father's wealth came from, though?
No, I do not.
Okay. His father's wealth came from creating suburbs, He got rich off of creating suburbs. Period. Let me pull this up. Right. Now, do you think during that time we could have gotten, me and you could have got a house out in the suburbs?
During that time?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, probably for the right price.
The answer is no. We could not have gotten no house out in the suburbs.
Wait a minute. What time are you talking? You talking about?
During 1940s, 1950s, 1960s.
Oh, no. Definitely not.
Right. So we were forced to live in the inner cities.
Right.
That is a phenomenon known as urbanization. So with the white folks, moving out of the inner city into the suburbs, what problem did that create?
White people moving from the inner city to the suburbs. It created well, there had to be an economic struggle between the two different areas, the suburbs and the inner city.
Okay, well, when white folks left, let me ask you this: what did they take with them? That might be the better question to ask you.
Everything.
Explain everything. You got to expound on this. This is a GED level broadcast. Drop some GEDs in the chat, please. There she go. Dorothy got it. She said that they removed the resources with them.
Everything.
Yeah, they took the resources with them. So you no longer had you no longer had the New York is some whole other different shit. All right. New York, that's a whole other different shit. You know, that's not even, New York don't even count. Whether we talking about outside of New York, yeah. New York is some whole other different shit, Sharon. But basically, you had the resources being removed. You had simple things such as like garbage pickups. When black folks were, you had the invention of like housing projects, all types of different shit that was going on in the 1950s, the housing projects. You had, at first they were getting maintained, but then you didn't have electricians that was coming in. You didn't have just a public cleanup. You had crooked politicians. You didn't have people actively going in and updating the school curriculums. You didn't have you didn't have oversight on whether the public education was being administered right? Because once we get out of World War II, then we have to go into Brown versus the Board of Education. That's when the Supreme Court basically decided that y'all gotta go to school with these niggas. White folks ain't like that. White folks ain't like that. So, that's something major. That's something major that happened. And when you have white folks removing resources out of the inner city, what did that create?
Segregation.
No. They created a ghetto.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. Are you familiar with Brown versus the Board of Education?
I am.
Okay. What was Brown versus the Board of Education?
Brown versus the Board of Education was whenever the Supreme Court ruled that state laws established racial segregation in public schools. That's what it was.
They ruled again. They ruled that you cannot, basically segregate public schools on the basis of race and stuff like that.
Right.
So that was basically the end of overt racism. Racism began to get more covert. But what did that? What also started?
Equal opportunities, pretty much, is what it boiled down to.
Right. Yeah. So what did that start?
That started.
It's an I word that ends with the end.
I word that ends with an end.
Yeah.
When did it start?
I'll give you Martin Luther King did a speech on it. This was the second to last speech that he did before he died.
Okay.
Integration.
I would cancel to the end.
Integration.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking something else.
Integration. Because, yeah. Integration. These are the true factors that created the problem in the Black community. It wasn't the Willie Lynch letter. These three things: the migrations of Blacks migrating upward from the South into the major cities, that created one of the conditions that is spoken about in the Willie Lynch letter. Then you got urbanization. That's the removing of the resources. So now you are creating people that are fighting for already limited resources. And you go from living a decent life. Remember, when they migrated up, they didn't have no money. So they went to the low income places out there in the community. That's why Black folks, we still got a sense of togetherness right now.
Okay.
We still got a sense of togetherness right now. So you create urbanization, right? This is in the late 40s into the 50s. You know, again, we starting to see Levitt places like this that's on the screen. This is Levittown, Pennsylvania. This is, again, Levittown, Pennsylvania is a suburb. We starting to see the invention of the suburbs. Now, from there, we start to see integration, right? Because Brown versus the Board of Education basically was the end of really segregation, or it should have been. Now, Martin Luther King them had to basically keep banging, chunking their nuts up to get the true end of what was supposed to be segregation, even though we know that shit ain't really ended. But, you know, the lie of the myth of the end of segregation was after Martin Luther King died, and basically President Lyndon Baines Johnson basically barred and outlawed it. Now, then we saw integration. Martin Luther King said, "I fear that I have integrated my people into a burning building." Have you ever heard that? You ever heard of that speech?
Yes.
Okay. So these were the three pieces that have caused the basic things that summarized or talked about in the Willie Lynch speech. Because, you know, skin color. But if you could get a job, a unionized job, because you're a lighter skin, then cool. Yeah, you know, hey, listen, if you younger, right, you know, do you really want to compete for a job with a 20-year-old? You ain't been around the block. You know what I'm saying? You know the bullshit. You know what it's going to cost. You know what the pay cycle is. You got responsibilities. You got things that you are used to. You got more responsibilities. Therefore, you need more money for it to be a decision. When you 20, you gullible as hell. You will take whatever they're giving you. I would say that that's a major causation in a young versus old. You know, when you get, like I say, that you got the light skin versus the dark skin. And again, I mean, when you talk about hair texture, or, you know, do you got some? I hear the term pretty hair, right? I heard that that's good hair. Now, You know the importance of good hair, right?
I don't know the importance of good hair. No.
All right. So, like I was explaining yesterday, black is a genetically dominant trait or a genetically dominant gene. Therefore, if you have Negro hair, right, and I can see that you have Negro hair, I'm not letting you near me. I'm not letting you into my family. I'm not being friends with you because you possess the genetic power to annihilate me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not mixing that with my bloodline. No, nigga, you can't date my daughter. So, what are your thoughts? Because we have now reached, we have reached our conclusion. Those are the three factors. Those are the three true factors that are more prevalent than any of the things that Willie Lynch said, and those are things that we can directly trace.
I mean, what you're saying is right. I mean, those are all historical facts that support, everything that you said. So,
What's your feelings about the book club?
I think it's good. I mean, it's educational, gives people a chance to maybe learn about something or, review something they may not have ever been interested in or may have been interested in and never took the time to read or review it. So I think it's a good thing. It's definitely needed. What's going on in the world today, all the things going on. People can understand history and how it pertains to what's going on in the world today. So I think it's a good thing. I think you're going to get a lot of copycats. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, shit. Again, as I was reading this book, the book that we are discussing right now, I saw something. One of the last things that he wrote in the end of this chapter, and I think I like this so much that I think I'm gonna steal it, right? Let's see here. In the arena of serious scholarship and primary research, the standing rule is that documentation beats conversation. There's a fundamental difference between proof and propaganda, between evidence and ideology, and between knowledge and mere belief. I like that. I'm gonna steal that shit. You know what I'm saying?
I feel that.
That might be the remix of the opinionated right there. You know what I'm saying? I might steal that and say.
You might put it on a shirt or something.
I might change it. I might change this. We bring the research to. The standing rule is that documentation beats conversation. There's a difference between proof and propaganda, evidence and ideology, and knowledge and belief.
I would definitely say whatever books you're going to have the book club read, we got to have a little bit more time to read it.
Well, I'm telling y'all right now, should we going to They Came Before Columbus, go and get them.
Because you got to think about people got to get the book, they got to order the book, the time that they get the book, then they got to have time to read the book. So if you do like a projected list of books, they can be proactive.
All right, so let me ask you, okay. A projected list of books.
Yeah.
Write wish in the chat if y'all want Wish to come out with this list of projected books. I mean, shit. And also write wish in the chat Okay, now beyond y'all writing wish in the chat, write what level y'all read on. Okay, because this is a simple book. This is not a long book. That's why I come on pumping this shit out like this. These books are simple.
They might be simple to you, but you gotta, you're working with, some people just
common sense and Google. That's all I'm working with.
Yeah, but some people don't read that. And then some people don't even have their books.
I told folks to get it on the Kindle. These are like 2 or 3 pages that we are reading, like maybe 4 or 5 at the most. Now, shouldn't you know the type of phone calls I get? I break down whole law cases, and I still read these little books. I ensure nobody's caseload is as large as mine right now.
So, yeah, I don't think you got too many participants right now in the chat because probably everybody's listening or,
Well, some people are not going to read the book, though. We just got to keep it real. So, we can't appease everybody.
True.
We can't appease everybody because it's only really, we got 32 people in here, but it's only, 17 folks. I'm sorry, about 7 folks that we send stuff out to. No, we sent it out to Cheryl and stuff too. Whoever was on that email list, but we'll get the opinionated books list. Do y'all want to just go ahead and remove the book off of there? Trust me, I'm lying, because it seems like everybody tends to like these more African-centered themes. And if trust me, I'm lying. If we ain't ready for that right now, then we could go away with it. So if y'all want to remove Trust Me, I'm Lying off of the book list, write remove in the chat, please.
I don't think you're going to get too many people to say anything. There's probably like only 2 people that's talking in the chat, 2 or 3.
Bring y'all asses out the goddamn bush. Shit, how about that?
Well, when you get your projected books, you could, even if that book is on the list, then at that time we have a conversation about which ones you want to stay, and which ones you want to, or which ones will be first and which ones will be last. Like Dorothy said, just move it back. Don't remove it completely, but just maybe not make it like the first book or something like that. So you can make like 5 projected books, and then you say, well, the first 2 weeks we're going to do this book, the second 2 weeks we're going to do this book, and that way people can be prepared.
First we got we can read it later. Okay, Demetrius. All right, first, what is everybody's reading level? Because I read at a graduate level, so I can read a 400-page book like that. What's y'all reading levels?
I can't read a 400-page book that quick because I overthink things, and sometimes when I read something, if I don't understand what I'm reading, I'll go back and read it again until I understand it. Or if there's
you understand we're gonna read all these books one chapter at a time, though, right?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, the way that I read, I might come across a word that I'm not familiar with, and then I'll look it up, and then it kind of prolongs the whole reading process for me.
Everybody's saying stuff. Ain't nobody wrote their reading level in the chat, though.
I don't think too many people are gonna put their reading level in the chat.
Then how am I supposed to know? Because everybody's saying everybody's saying move it back. If I move back, we ain't gonna never do this shit for real. Like, so, I mean, if folks better speak up. This ain't the time to be all shy and shit. You know?
And you got to think about people that wear glasses like me that don't wear glasses.
That's what they gotta do with the reading and comprehension.
You gotta have on your reading glasses in order for you to read the book.
Shit.
I'm just messing, but yeah, I don't read fast because I overthink things, and I'll go back and I'll read it. I want to understand it. That's why with the second part of the Willie Lynch letter, part 2, it's like I'm reading it, but it's not registering because I'm still stuck on stuff before. So it's like, you know.
Are there any questions about the Willie Lynch parts 1 and 2?
No, he says it's a fake letter, and you pretty much went down the.
I'm talking about the folks in the chat.
In the chat. Yeah.
Is there any people in the chat, those who are in the bushes, those who are screen recording? Are there any questions? I'll still work. I have to do it once I settle down after work. He posted to Amazon link. Okay, so first off, we have to gotta establish what question we're wanting to answer, because we can't just have if we go create a book list, we can't just have a damn book list and it ain't no reason, rhyme or reason or you know, anything like that why we chose these books.
Right.
So, you know, what questions are we trying to answer, or are we just merely just reading for the sake of reading?
Well, technically, if you do the projected book list, you say book 1, and then up under the book 1, you're gonna put what is your take on the book? You know, what is your overview of the book? And each person will be able to write it down, so that way when they come to the live, they'll already have their notes in hand, and then that way when you're asking questions, they can just reference their notes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you got folks who, like, some of this stuff we just got to do, and I mean, you could go back and read it for yourself afterwards, because we got folks who ain't even stepping up and saying shit. So, you know, how do we appease those folks? How, you know, and then if we can't move at everybody's pace, you know what I'm saying? So that Trent, this must be your first book club. We just read to learn more about various topics. I don't know. Must be your first book club, because you can't just say, I want to read about space and mind and art, and then we reading about the history of Africa over here. If we have to determine what we're reading in order so that I can come out with a list of books. Because if we just come out with a list of books and we have not first established what people in college that don't have a GED call a hypothesis from what I was told, you know, when I was, because I couldn't afford a college education, so I just used to go to the community college, put a cup up to the door, and be listening to what all was going on inside the classroom. But according to what they were saying in them classes, right, you first have to form a hypothesis. Then, once you form a hypothesis, then you go to either substantiate or unsubstantiate what you hypothesized. So I'm asking, what is the hypothesis? what is it that we are trying to figure out? What is it that we're trying to create more understanding of, so that we can go into a list of books that coincide with the hypothesis. Now, listen.
Well, yesterday you had said something about Africa.
Right.
And I think you had a good amount of people that had put that in the chat. So maybe that's where you can start.
Listen, these are my books, right? You see, I got books from all over the world. I got books that hit on some everything from, secrets of selling weed to molecular biology. Books on side bitchery,
Pimping.
I ain't got too many books on pimping, you know what I'm saying? Pimping, that's something you gotta experience. This is just my personal, these are my personal, and I have read all of these books,
Well, you have the big catalog of books you read, so it'll be hard for us to pick books. You might have already read the book.
Well, I'll go back and read, because shit, we gonna go in and we gonna interpret these books. Because it's different when like I say, throughout all of this, I do got a book on pimping. Rosebud.
And you said you can read one book per day?
Yeah, it was a point in time where I did used to read one book per day. Now, doing this type of shit, I can't read a book and produce a show in the same day, because when I read it, these are the notes. This is the notes for the show today, right? This is the notes for the show yesterday.
Well, we following your lead. Whatever you tell us to read is what we're gonna do.
All right. Shit, if we asking me, fuck it. I know 2 books we gonna read right off the goddamn bat. I'm gonna give y'all 3 books that we gonna read. The 3 books we gonna read are number 1. They came before Columbus, right?
You want to write them in the chat?
By Ivan Van Sertima. I hope they're 100 pages or less. See, people ain't. You see how folks ain't established that what their reading level is. 100-page book, that's easy for me to read. Right now, we coming out with the Day Came Before Columbus. Now, book number 2.
Okay, let me write that down in the chat so we can have a stamp.
We gonna read Nellie Fuller's book, The Unified Compensatory Code Concept.
What's the book 2? What's the name of book 2?
I'm not gonna copy and paste this shit. I'm about to get my Mike Leonard on in this bitch.
Okay. There you go.
The United Independent Compensatory Code system concept textbook. Now, these are some deep ass books. This is some fucking reading. Okay? This ain't that bullshit. These are some things we're going to actually have to read. So, let me lay that right now.
How much time are we going to get to read these books?
We're going to read these things one chapter at a time. We're going to read these one chapter at a time. So, that is not, it's not overwhelming. Right? So we are only going to be discussing one chapter at a time. I think that that's more than fair. And I think that that's something that's practical and easy to do. I'm degreed up 3 times. I'm on a higher learning level. I have a study guide too. Okay, I have the new version of compensatory code. I hope they have an Audible. Nah, this one don't have an Audible. It ain't no Audible. See, some of these books that I'm getting ready to, because we got people complaining about they can't read Kindles and shit. So I can't please every goddamn body, man. I can only do what I can do.
Right.
Shit, everybody. Some people rolling with it. Some people ain't rolling with it. Shit, y'all too goddamn picky. You ask me. Shit. Now, this is book number 3. The ISIS papers, the keys to the colors. Again, these are, since everybody here is a grad school member, these are grad school books. These are books that are written by doctorate level people. So some of y'all gonna complain about them. This is actually we're gonna start this on we're gonna start book 2 on Sunday. So
Book 2 on Sunday.
Yeah, those of y'all who haven't, if y'all ain't started on a Willie Lynch, if you ain't bought Willie Lynch, y'all go ahead and buy They Came Before Columbus. And we're going to start on that one on Sunday.
Now it might take them longer than just a few days to get the books. If they ordering it, it might take, 3-4 days.
Let's see. Oh my God. Let's see here. Let's see. This is Amazon Prime. Shit, let me buy another one of these.
I'll just go to the library and get it from the library.
Shit, I just bought another one. Shit. I don't even know if that. Damn, I think I still got that shit in the basement. Okay, so the ISIS papers. Well, how do y'all want to do this book club, man? Because everybody got stuff going on. They can't get the books on time. I'm not. I'm only gonna put as much effort in this as everybody else is putting into it. So if everybody else need 3-4 weeks, then it ain't gonna be a whole bunch of urgency on my behalf either.
I think we're moving at your pace. I mean, but at the same time, if you're going to order books, you just got to keep in mind that it might take some time for the people to get it. Dorothy said every Wednesday and Sunday. I mean, and then if they have the book, they can participate. If they don't, then they just can listen and take notes until their books come in.
How are we gonna read a book like one chapter at a time? If we only going on Wednesday and Sunday.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm gonna get the book. I'm gonna read them. I'm gonna talk about them. If you have not read it, then you can come in, you could listen, and you could go back and read it for reference, because the stuff will be here. The video is gonna be up. The videos will be up for you once you read through it. Certainly don't want to spoil it for you, but people can come back and read. People can come back and listen to it in their time.
Right.
People can come back and listen to it in their time, but we gotta maintain the schedule. We read through it. And at the very most, we can take a couple days, 2-3 days to read one chapter. But if we are, reading and discussing kind of what we got going on, then that's something that, again, we can do it. They ain't got to be super long videos, but we're gonna come in and we're gonna touch on the finer points of what it is that we, what it is that we read. What do we find there? I'm not always right. I'm not always authoritative. This is why we are reading, so each one can teach one. So if it's something that I see, or it's something, an opinion that y'all have that I may not be aware of, I haven't spoken on, then, by all means, go ahead and, speak on it. But that's just it.
I think maybe you should encourage a little bit more calls as well. Because normally when you ask for calls, you don't really get no calls. So in order for you to have an interactive book club, people gotta want to call in and have these discussions.
Do more than one chapter. You have multiple days. Only time I would do more than one chapter is if it was a small chapter, or a chapter does not make sense without reading the next chapter, but I'm not, I think that it's very important, because it's not, reading a book is one thing, comprehending and assimilating is a horse of a different color. And so, again, we have to read and assimilate. Okay. So, when we read through this thing chapter by chapter, we making sure that we can properly masticate it. Therefore, we can digest it. Because again, this is a grad school level production. You know, this is a grad school level production. This ain't, this ain't that other stuff. This is grad school level production right here. So we going in, we reading through these books, and the more that you read, the more that we expand our stuff. These are not videos. These are workshops.
Right.
These are workshops. So we are having like learning workshops where we going in and, hey, we reading stuff. But as you were saying with the callers, the problem with callers is that book 3 is on the screen. Book 3 is on the screen. The problem with callers is that, everybody got to stay on topic. Everybody has to stay on topic. Or, if we go off topic, if we veer off topic, then, do that by way of answering the question.
Right.
And so, again, I don't want to be.
Tonight we did pretty good staying on topic. I mean, we went a few places, a few twists and turns, but ultimately brought it back to the initial subject.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it can be done.
Yeah, well, I had to reiterate kind of what we went over yesterday in part 2. Now, Saturday, we are going to break down the Clarence Thomas stuff. That's what we're going to do on Saturday.
Okay.
That's just it. So, I mean, and we're going to learn more about ourselves as Black people, Miss Connor.
I'm sorry if you hear the snoring in the background. That's my pug. It's very loud. I don't know if you can hear it or not.
No, I don't hear nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is it. So I say, yeah. I'm gonna give somebody else a chance to call in and say if they have learned anything from today's broadcast.
All right. Good night, everybody.
All right. If you want to call in and share what you learn from parts 1 and 2 of the Willie Lynch letter, please do so. Call in if you want to talk about what you learned today. Yeah, if you want to talk about what you learned today, call in. Call in and give your thoughts on basically what we learned so much. call in and give your opinions, you know. Call in and give your thoughts on